Ladies, you are on.
We talked to each other. Yesterday, Bishop Bowen was telling my assistant and me how hard it was to get you to leave Notre Dame and go to Catholic Relief Services, and what a coup it was to get you. So how did they get you there?
Yeah, he was gracious, but it was a very difficult move. I spent my whole life in academia and in business education and business. Most people would think of my job at Notre Dame as the perfect job. The school was ranked #1 at that point and still is in undergraduate business education. Everything was going well and I had the perfect team. So the question is, why leave? Particularly going into a field where I know so little about. I did not grow up in international development. So there were many considerations about why change your life upside down, #1. And #2 is, can you do any good, given that it's also new. And #3 is it, represents distance from friends and communities, and even how my husband and I will see each other, just because this job requires a lot of travel. So those are all the considerations. And in the end, I worked with a spiritual advisor. And it was a 6-month deliberation. And I worked through each of these concerns. And I think the bottom line is, I left it to God. If the job is offered to me and people know what I do and what I don't do, what is in my background, what is not in my background, if they still want me to step up, I will trust their judgment. And I will just let God lead and presume that I am in there for a reason. And then all the difficulties, again, is to believe that it doesn't just depend on us. God helps us through. And that sometimes it's in these changes and difficulties and dislocations that we actually meet God. So for those reasons, and of course, now I know the work to serve the poor is actually a tremendous privilege, right? To be able to help children be healthy, to help mothers know what to do. We're all the same when it comes to being a parent. We all want the best for our children, the best of health, best of opportunities in education, shelter, security, stability, peace. All these things we want for our children. Other people want the same thing. So to be able to work towards these ends, to really provide a better tomorrow for people and enable them to have another chance. And then a lot of times a better chance at life is a privilege. So I have no regrets about making that move.
Well, I assume when you're working at Notre Dame in the Business Center, which Bishop Bowen said you started it and you've kept it going and everything like that, that you were working with business every day. And now, are you working business every day? Are you working hand-on with what you're talking about, mothers and children, or both? Or
so, of course, in my prior life, as the dean of a business school and my whole career in business education, I work a lot with business. We place students there. We do a lot of executive education. I'm a consultant to business and so on. So nowadays, how does business enter into my work now? First of all, there is a common discipline for excellence. In the work to serve the poor, we must be at our very best. And so there are certain disciplines relating to processes, relating to systems and leadership principles, which could be applied. And I would say that that body of work is better developed in business education, and so I get to apply similar principles. But the second thing I want to say is that many businesses nowadays also have a desire to be constructive, to contribute to better lives of people in the communities they work in. And so I would say that the agenda, there is overlap and there is common ground between what we want to achieve and between some good businesses and what they want to achieve.
right now with Congress, and as you know, the big fiscal cliff and all of that is going on right now. How are you personally approaching that to convince Congress not to eliminate food and basic necessities for people overseas?
As we have always done through many different administrations in lean years, not so lean years, we have been advocating seriously, proactively, and intensely for the attention of our political leaders to not balance a budget on the backs of people where they could die or where they could suffer disease and malnutrition. A child who suffers malnutrition in the first 1,000 days, the consequences are drastic. So we've always done this. Now we just step up the work. It says we have 3-week period to make many visits. We mobilize our people in the pews, our church leaders, to reach out to people in Congress. We have provided position papers. We have provided materials on our website to engage both the populace as well as people on the Hill to understand that these type of cuts, number one, is actually very small. It would not allow us to balance our budget. There's really only less than 0.5% of the federal budget that really goes into poverty-focused aid. In total, international aid is only 1%. So whatever cuts we make, it is not going to solve our problem. But the people who will be affected, we're talking about the cast of millions. Millions of people whose lives could be lost. Millions of children who will be malnourished. Children who then cannot go to school. And so we are working very hard through all means, from visits, letters, phone calls, and of course providing the materials behind the scene to engage and educate people about this.
Everything I've ever read about CRS, you have an excellent record when it comes to the amount of money you spend in administration as opposed to the services. I think you're rated highly in that.
Right. We have an ethos and a commitment that every dollar given to us is meant for the people we serve. And so our ratio has been 93 to 94 cents of what we spend go into the field. And we're committed to programs for the poor, and so 93 to 94 cents go into the field to support the poor people. We of course know what a dollar can buy. We know what $150 can buy. And so we are not dismissive about money. $150 can support a child in education for a full year.
Wow. How have you kept your family life going then?
Actually, it's been kind of fun. Our 2 sons are grown. They're 25 and 28. My husband and I have known each other since I was 18 years old, and he was 23. We dated for 7 years. We've been married for over 30-some years, and so we have been friends and partners for all of our life. So now it feels like we're dating. I live in Baltimore because the headquarters is there, but I'm not spending many days in Baltimore. I travel extensively internationally and actually domestically also. So he has access to my electronic calendar. We find out when we can get together, whether it is in Baltimore or South Bend. The one big improvement is that when we were students, when we saw each other, I had to ride a Greyhound bus. And I'm so thankful to God that I don't have to ride a Greyhound bus anymore. So actually it's been fun. It's like dating again. We're exploring new cities. In Baltimore, we live in a 1-bedroom apartment and love it. Our offices and our, everything we do is in that 1-bedroom apartment, and we have so much fun exploring new cities and getting a sense of our neighbors. We live in an apartment where people are very young. They all look like graduate students. So I think in every situation there is joy, and we certainly experience that.
You mentioned South Bend. Who do you think is going to win the Notre Dame Alabama game?
Notre Dame, absolutely. I don't even have any questions.
Well, I'm glad they're not playing Georgia because we would be really conflicted.
That is right.
That's probably going to be the end unless we need more. You're adjusting the temperature. I can go on and on with you.
Turning off
if
the
Mike
fan.
has more.
Do you have any more questions?
What does your husband do?
My husband is a computer consultant, and so he could actually approach his work from anywhere in the world, so long as it's his computer. he could log into the systems of his clients.
So that
And make
it's
changes.
easy communications.
Yes,
He can
so-
find you anywhere.
Yes. And again, today with technology, you could be in communication all the time. And I would say, you know, we've been married 30-some years now. While this is hard, it actually presents new opportunities, right? To communicate differently, to watch out for each other differently, have different conversations, meet up with each other in different places in the world.
Vacation.
And so we're both at that time of our life where we also have the flexibility to not be tied to children at home.
True. When I was watching, Bishop Boland was showing his photos of, I guess, his trip to Tanzania, and from that I could tell you were very active in going, when you visit these places, you're not a bureaucrat who just stands there with papers or anything. You were actively enjoying walking around, getting involved. So it looks like you make a lot of trips and get
I
involved.
do. I was a member of the board of CRS for 6 years.
That's right.
And so I saw a lot of our programs, and that changed my life. I think that was the beginning. To see such committed people really dedicating their careers in very difficult and complex places and making a difference. So sometimes it's easy to say, oh, these problems are always there, they're never solved, it doesn't do any good, and I don't want to read about this does not affect our lives. Being on the board and being in the field, saw people making a difference, saw lives that have been improved. We actually have a video on our website, which I ask anybody to go see because it is so beautiful, called Higher Gives. And there you see mothers who have a healthy child, education for children, harvest. All of those are such wonderful bounty of God. And to see that not only we get to enjoy it, but other people do, is such a privilege. And I think that, you know, all of us who have multiple children, we expect our children to take care of each other. That some will be more successful, some will need more help. That one day when we're gone, that what we have left behind is really they for each other. That's the biggest gift, right, in family. And when you see these people, it becomes real. God's command of love each other, that He gave us as family and that we are family. And those who are more fortunate and more able are expected to help those who are not. And I think in the end, like Mother Teresa's work, we are not expected to solve all the problems, but we're also not allowed to turn our back and pretend we don't see.
And then one question, but I'll wait for the fire truck to disappear. The question I'll ask, and I'll give you a moment to ponder it, is let's say you were able to walk into my parish here in Savannah, and you were going to have 45 seconds at the end of Mass to make an announcement about CRS. What would you tell the people in the pews in 45 seconds about the importance of the work of CRS and how they might be involved?
So you should time me so that it's an honest 45 seconds.
Well, you know,
I would say that remember that CRS is working in your name, the name of the U.S. Catholics in the world. Our work is to make God real. And it becomes real in the form of hope and in the form of love. And that they could be engaged by praying for us, contributing to us, and also advocating for the poor.
good.
Is that 45 seconds?
You're close enough. You did it in under. That's good.
Succinct.
Thank you.
Very good. Wow. Faith. And the new evangelization, how does the new evangelization, the year of faith, how does that affect CRS and your work?
So the new evangelization is about good news. And the good news is really Jesus Christ loves us, lives among us, and is always with us. And because of that, He brings unbelievable blessings and mercy. So that is the good news. And the good news is proclaimed. I mean, the new evangelization is about a new order, new expressions, and new methods in proclaiming that good news. And that proclamation is done both by words and by action. So CRS is charged with action. It is our job to make the gospel real. And this is the commitment of the U.S. Catholic Church, right? To make the gospel a living reality for anybody in need. So our part in the new evangelization is to proclaim the real reality and the presence of God through works. So that's our role.
You wrote a letter about that the other day or something.
Yes.
I read that. I thought that was terrific because we've been talking about that in our office about the fact that you read all these documents, that's wonderful, but how do you put that into action? And CRS is a perfect example of that. You've followed in the footsteps of Ken Hackett, who's been there forever, and did you find any difficulties coming in? And I'm sure you're the first woman in this job. He was there forever. And you're the new face of Catholic Relief Services. Of course, everybody said you're wonderful, but did you find any difficulties at the beginning?
In succeeding Ken Hackett is a big act, and those are big shoes. Ken spent his whole career as CRS and then 18 years as president. And in that process, really build up the reputation through the quality of the work of CRS and take it to over 100 countries, serving 100 million people. So my role then is to build from his success and attend to more the internal organization in terms of the structures, the systems, what do we need in order to step up to the new challenges facing us. So Ken was so successful in facing the challenges of the past and building a successful organization. So now with the reputation, with the scale, with the capabilities that we have developed, how do we take these and address the new challenges coming at us so that we could earn the privilege of serving the poor?
Reading about your early life and how you decided to leave China and against your father's wishes to come to the United States and to pursue a career and not a marriage of convenience. And then, of course, you sound like you found a wonderful marriage here. And I imagine your father's not alive still?
My father has passed on.
He's passed on. How do you think he would view, or probably from heaven maybe now, what you've done with your life and that kind of thing? And
I think my father would be so very proud. I think I was the first woman he knew well who not only went to school in the U.S. but received a PhD. I mean, academic performance was very important to him. But he also, I think, one time reminded me, of course I was trained by the Maryknoll Sisters, he said, you know, the sisters taught you this, and that is, if somebody hit you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. And he said, as your father, I'm going to suggest that's not very good advice in the world that we live in. And I think that I would love to have that conversation with him again. I don't remember being hit on the cheek, really. But I also now come to understand the incredibly wonderful and good people that we run into, that somehow grace begets grace. And you know, the point of the gospel is that do not respond in kind. If it is something which is negative or evil or abusive, you have to rely on God's grace to do otherwise. I would love to have that conversation with him again.
interesting.
Because I think the people that I ran into, he did not factor into his advice to me about, you know, just don't turn the other cheek.
Interesting. Do you have family still in China?
I have a sister-in-law and her children in Hong Kong. My brother traveled a lot, but I come from a family of 6 children. And at one point we have 6 different nationalities of in-laws.
Oh my goodness. So do you have family reunions ever?
We have family reunions, and we are just very blessed in terms of all being relatively healthy.
That's great. Wonderful. And your children are grown, no grandchildren yet?
I don't have grandchildren, and I have 2 sons, and they're young men of deep faith and big hearts. So one is a young doctor who wants to be a family, wants to practice in family medicine, which is an area where people do not choose because it's the lowest a category for pay, most people choose it are women. But he's worked a lot in clinics for people who don't have insurance, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to be in family medicine. And I have a younger son.
Wow.
So that's the joy, I think, to see your children come into their own. And I think that sometimes parents ignore that of the many things which are important to pass on. I mean, clearly discipline and a sense of responsibility and some educational achievements, the ability to sort of operate in the world is really one of the most important gifts, is a sense of the reality of God and the presence of God. And I think faith oftentimes is passed on within family. I mean, it does require parish life, right? And we are a sacramental church, so it requires that. But I think the role of family and parents is so critical in terms of how faith is passed on.
Any other questions that you have?
No, you've been
We're just
marvelous.
so, I was just gonna say, we're so privileged to get this.
Oh,
That's right.
Oh, really?
No. And I just want to have 3.5 more minutes of your time to show you another video.
Okay.
Because this is a wonderful
Let's see
video.
the video.
And Mike, why don't you just take my chair, because I don't need a good chair to watch
Okay,
this.
and just, what's the address of that video?
You go on the CRS website, which is crs.org, and it's called Higher Gifts. And I think that is on our carousel. You know, there are all these, and it's